Hey everyone, in this video we'll be taking a look at the Steam Deck LCD versus the Steam Deck OLED. I know this isn't a very current topic these days, however with the steepest sale on the Steam Deck LCD, with it being cheaper than the Nintendo Switch, is now a better time than ever to jump into the Steam Deck if you haven't got one already, or is it worth upgrading from an LCD to an OLED? Now this video will tackle these questions and more, including performance comparisons and a discussion on HDR versus SDR, and how to properly ensure you are getting the advertised 1000 nits of brightness on your Steam Deck OLED, as you are very likely committing an error that will limit you to about 600 nits or so. But before we get into all that, I would like to introduce to you for your consideration the best Steam Deck dock. With the UGREEN game console dock, you can dock pretty well any handheld in your collection with or without a case. However, in the addition to the 3 USB-A ports, 1 USB-C, SD card slots, HDMI out, and Ethernet, we also get a removable cable in the box. Now, jokes aside about UGREEN finally including a cable with the product inside, blah blah blah, this is an absolute game changer as it will ensure that you are not limited by the slot of the dock, and you can use a traditional USB-C hub if so desired. Instead of slotting it into the dock, you can just kind of fold it up. So with this as well, with the cases, I know with JSOCs you needed an adapter for the kill switch case, I believe, with their original design. So this would eliminate that because you could just not use that cable, flip it around even, and put the angled end plugged into the dock, and then put the straight end into the console. Even better, there you go. But if you want to check this out for yourself, be sure to grab yours today, and currently it can be had for sale at 10% off on Amazon. Feel free to check out the affiliate links in the description below as well. You can pick up some chargers while you're there. In the first segment, we'll talk about the design and feel of both the Steam Deck and the Steam Deck OLED. However, at a first glance, there's not much to compare. The quality of materials feel exactly the same between the LCD and the OLED models, and as you'll see in my video, the Steam Deck LCD is swapped from the OEM case to the Atomic Purple from Extreme Rate. If you haven't seen my video in the past, I did indeed destroy my screen during this mod, and I will touch on that a bit later. However, some eagle-eyed viewers may already be seeing a difference. The weight of the Steam Deck OLED is about 30 grams lighter than the LCD model, all while cramming a bigger battery in there, claiming about 30 to 50% advantage over the other. All this makes her admittedly large handle to play with and not the easiest to stuff into a carry-on at times, but its size lends to its comfort level, with full-size joysticks and a large grip area to accommodate many sizes of hands. Luckily, due to the same chassis being used, more or less, we get broad compatibility with existing accessories such as the D-Brand kill switch and other mod case designs. Unfortunately, the shell swaps will not work as there is no real mainstream option out there available currently, but in the LCD's lifetime, it was about a year or so after the release that we saw full shell swaps, and I do suspect that to maybe be just a little bit under that for the OLED model, like maybe just under a year, just over, but don't quote me on that. The real star of the show for me, and I'm sure many others, is the absolute night and day difference in battery life when playing games. Now, when playing something like Halo Reach on the Master Chief Collection, I can lower the TDP to about 8 to 10 watts, and the reported readout from 100% charge claims just over 3 hours of life. My experience when playing at 75% brightness and SDR, I can achieve or exceed that claim. When playing in HDR, expect the panel to use slightly more juice. Now, even when maxed out at 15 watt TDP, the battery life is quite respectable, with being able to achieve close to, if not more than 2 hours of uninterrupted gameplay. Typically, my Steam Deck OLED has been able to outlast my play sessions in either high or low TDP ranges. This is a huge win, and of course there are other options available such as battery banks that can double as chargers for your laptops and phones, but really who wants to kind of carry around a second big heavy item along with their original Steam Deck? Getting into performance, there are a few things to note. Both Steam Deck models use a custom APU from AMD based on their Zen 2 and RDNA 2 architecture named Aerith. This chip is tuned and excels in low power performance. However, in the Steam Deck OLED, it is using a 6nm process instead of a 7nm process found in this LCD model. Valve claims that the performance of the two chips will often be the same, with the new chip never underperforming versus the old. In reality, due to the increase in RAM speed from 5500 megatransfers to 6400 megatransfers, we will often see better performance on the OLED model versus the LCD. It is not monumental or even noteworthy at times, however it is there. Other outlets such as Digital Foundry have done extensive testing, and they've found either a no % difference or very minimal % difference, all the way up to about 9% difference, depending on title and scenario. However, in my testing here, I've just compared Cyberpunk 2077 and Horizon Zero Dawn, and the results are on screen as shown. Now, this isn't to malign the original Steam Deck and swear it off completely based on the performance difference. If you have the Steam Deck LCD, I wouldn't see a valid reason to go run out and upgrade for that alone. Where the upgrade starts to make sense is if you value things like HDR, OLED, 90Hz, and more importantly, the extended battery life. Instead of breaking this down into individual segments, I'll talk about the screen as a whole. If you have never experienced true and proper HDR, I feel bad for you. Unfortunately, manufacturers have had almost blank checks, so to speak, on HDR or high dynamic range. It's been around for quite some time, but only recently TVs and monitors come down into the more affordable price range with proper HDR support. BESA has their own guidelines on what can be called HDR and different levels involved. For instance, they have HDR label 400, and although in my opinion and many others, you would need at least 800 nits of brightness for good and noticeable difference between SDR. However, the higher you go, typically the better. Unfortunately, if you do not have a proper panel to display the content, it will often look washed out and generally worse than SDR content on the same panel. This was especially evident on TVs in the $600 to $800 price range pre-COVID, which advertised HDR left, right, and center, but could never do any justice to it. Now enter the Steam Deck OLED. The panel on here is the first in a gaming handheld to allow a full HDR signal up to 1000 nits of brightness. Now, as mentioned previously, if you already have a Steam Deck OLED, you may not be getting the maximum brightness you can display. Now, when you max out the brightness slider in SteamOS, going above the 75% mark will introduce digital gain and result in clipping at higher levels of brightness. When set to 100%, if using an in-game HDR slider, you'll be limited to about 600 nits of brightness instead of the 1000 nits. What you'll need to do, and this credit is to the post on Reddit here listed on the screen and in the description, is to go to maximum 100% brightness and then count 25 ticks down from there. When playing an HDR game, if at 100% brightness, you will see a different shade of color on the slider representing this as well. Also, turn off auto brightness. Now with that out of the way and being able to properly enjoy HDR to its fullest, we can talk about the refresh rate. It has jumped from 60 to 90 Hz, and while the panel being OLED, we are able to lock it to whatever FPS limit we would like, with the refresh rate kind of adjusting almost at a 1-to-1, except at certain points, like going to 40 Hz will go to 60, things like that. This panel does not support FreeSync or variable refresh rate. However, with it being an OLED panel, the pixel response time does mask some of the instability and lower frame rates, and generally the input response time is much better. Now VR would still be greatly appreciated, but even still the quality of the OLED panel more than makes up for it, and once you experience games with perfect black levels such as the classic Doom 3, which is notorious for looking bad on an LCD screen and losing a bit of the atmosphere due to the grayish washed out tones, or more modern classics like the Dead Space remake, this one is an absolute treat on an OLED with HDR. As I alluded to earlier, my Steam Deck LCD is not like the others, and this is in fact upgraded to the Deck HD screen. And while I will say the resolution difference is noticeable when using it in its 1200p mode, most of the time you'll need to dial it back to 800 anyway, so not to mention the fact that you need to load a custom BIOS every time that an official update for the BIOS is launched, and the lack of support from the team is concerning. As well, my Deck HD screen had 3 dead pixels from the factory, with no real kind of recourse. So I'd recommend you just stick with an OEM replacement, and if you do lose your screen on your OEM LCD model, I would just say, hey, use that as an excuse to upgrade to the OLED model. If you have the Steam Deck and only the Steam Deck, I would say that yes, it is very much worth the upgrade from the LCD model to the OLED. In my eyes, the Steam Deck OLED is the perfect gaming handheld and an even better one to complement a dedicated gaming PC. I've always said and still maintain that if I were to personally have one and only one handheld, it would be the Steam Deck, which rings even more true today with the Steam Deck OLED. On the flip side of this, if you are looking for a cheaper emulator handheld that can and will play Switch games, well, this can be had for cheaper than the Nintendo Switch if you go with the LCD version on sale. Now, this comes with the benefit of being a full-fledged gaming console as well. To take it one step further, you can typically find Steam Deck LCD models on sale locally through things like Facebook Marketplace or eBay. Then this could be an even cheaper way to get one. Granted, if you are comfortable going on marketplaces and doing all that stuff, just remember, be smart and be safe. Now, if you're not interested in the Steam Deck or feel it's too big or not powerful enough, then there are other options like the ROG Ally. Now, comparing the Ally to the Steam Deck more becomes a battle of Windows versus SteamOS, and you cannot deny that SteamOS is miles better than on a Windows OS handheld. Now, if you're talking about performance, obviously the ROG Ally is miles better, and if you crave performance and ease of use without any cheat getting in the way, then the Windows handheld ROG Ally specifically is an excellent handheld to get. With the upcoming ROG Ally X, you will be getting kind of that battery benefit upgrade versus the OLED and the base ROG Ally model, so that could be a route to go as well if you don't want to go SteamOS. In conclusion, the Steam Deck, no matter LCD or OLED model, are fantastic devices. Do they have their flaws? Sure. But if you're looking for a mostly no-nonsense gaming handheld that feels more like a PlayStation or Xbox, the Steam Deck is definitely the way to go in my opinion. Even though it is Linux at its core, this is what makes Steam Deck work, the low overhead it takes to get everything done in the super simple UI. I would say a vast majority of users would never need to launch into the desktop environment except for when following a guide like Cryo Utilities or something similar, but thanks to the helpful guides on the internet, navigating and getting stuff done on the Linux desktop is quite easy. For example, my wife used to use her Steam Deck as a full-time gaming console. That was all she played on, but now she uses the Ally. And when she wanted to play Star Wars Fallen Order, I didn't want to buy it again for her on Steam because I had it on EA, so instead of rebuying it for her, I just told her to follow one of my videos on how to install the third-party game stores. And she was able to follow it without a problem, and pretty much under like 10 minutes, I think she had it up and running, or up and installing at least. So, you know, it is daunting at first, but although that's the glory of the internet these days, you can kind of just follow along with anything as long as they're decent enough to begin with. Now, I am really interested in hearing what you all have to say and what handheld you think would be the go-to or end game in your eyes. Please let me know in the comments below. As well, if you have the LCD model, are you tempted to upgrade to the OLED model, or are you more or less just waiting for a Steam Deck 2 to be properly announced? Now, if you want to talk outside of YouTube and further discuss this, please feel free to join me in the Handheld United Discord, found on the screen and in the description. And myself and other content creators, the group will hold up podcasts typically every Sunday called Handhelds Undone Podcast. Now, finally, if you are looking for a robust dock that is compatible with virtually all devices, please check out the UGREEN and their products below. And thanks for watching. I hope you all have a great day.